I want to ask you, Breed, what is the biggest betrayal in the history of comic books? Now, I've got a couple of options here. This is not an end-all, be-all list, but I think these are some of the greatest betrayals. I think Marvel Comics' treatment of Spider-Man in One More Day, enormous betrayal. DC Comics killing off Jason Todd due to a phone poll was a betrayal. Bob Kane's treatment of Bill Finger, the Illuminati blasting Hulk into space. Tony Stark turns his back on heroes in Civil War. Captain America hails Hydra, and then Hal Jordan becomes Parallax. I consider those amongst the greatest betrayals in comic book history. What do you think, Breen? Is there one of those that is the great betrayal, or can you think of an even better one?
Okay, first I'm going to disqualify the Bob Kane, Bill Finger thing, because that's comic related, but that's real life. The screw job. I mean, that's Bob Michaels and Bill Hart. If I can tie that into wrestling, since it's WrestleMania season, that what he did to that man was despicable. And I mean, you can argue Stan and Jack till the cows come home. There are mitigating factors. There's Martin Goodman. There's the fact that Jack had problems with Joe Simon. He had problems with, he just was not the best businessman. Bill Finger just got screwed, period. So, that's
to the point where he was like destitute and living underneath a bench at one point, I believe.
When they let him write an episode of the Batman TV series, what he wanted most was just to be able to see his name in the credits for once.
It's unfortunate. He finally does get the credit, but it's been after, obviously, since he's passed away.
So, but as far as comics go, Marvel's treatment of Spider-Man in the 21st century.
So you're going bigger than One More Day. You're going One More Day. You're going Sins Past, the Dan Slott era, all the way up through the Zeb Wells era.
Well, okay, when they did the One More Day, that was ridiculous. And Joe Quesada's reasoning for it was petty and just ridiculous. While that was going on, you also had Brian Michael Bendis. When they reformed the Avengers in 2005, they knew they needed some names. So it was mandated that Spider-Man and Wolverine were put on the team. Mm-hmm. They're not Avengers, but they needed the names to sell comics, because at the time even the name Avengers was toxic. That's why the Ultimates weren't the Ultimate Avengers; they were just the Ultimates. But no sooner do they get him in there that they treat him like a mascot, like he's just in the way. He's there so the other members have someone to make fun of. He's a punchline. So in his own comic, they take his wife away from him and basically make him a 25-year-old high school junior. And then in the superhero team he's a member of, he's a joke. Now, why you do this to your flagship character, I'll never understand. And it hasn't gotten any better. It didn't get any better through the Slott era. You could argue it got worse. The aftermath of, Parker Industries or whatever, because I'd already checked out by then. But then the infamous, he's wearing Mockingbird's T-shirt, crashing on her couch. I mean, in my opinion, they've left so much money on the table by just adamantly refusing to give fans what they want. And it's like it's personal with them. Our friend Aaron, the term fantagonistic, never been more applicable than Marvel's treatment of Spider-Man in the last 20 years.
And there was a moment where it did feel like some of that was coming back. I think the Nick Spencer Amazing Spider-Man run, while not one of the truly greats of all time, but it is one of the truly good modern versions. It's maybe the best one that we've gotten in the last 10 to 15 years. And he obviously did wipe away Sins Past, which is a story that I know you hate, but it definitely felt like he was getting MJ and Peter back together. He had the ring in his pocket. It felt like they were going to do something that people had been asking for years upon years. And once they get out of spite, maybe because they were mad that he went to Substack, or maybe they always intended to pull the rug right out from underneath the Spider-Man fans, they didn't go through with it again. And it definitely does feel like an enormous betrayal, because every time you get that hope and you get that feeling that maybe Marvel are going to give Spider-Man fans what they want, what they need, they always just kind of point and laugh at you.
As far as Nick Spencer's run, he's the only writer that brought me back even for a few issues in the last 15 years. So I would agree that was probably the best we've had in that time. It would have been really interesting to see what would have happened had he not gone to Substack, because I know he wanted to bring the marriage back. He did undo, sins past. And I wonder where they would have come to loggerheads if he hadn't left, because they definitely punished him for leaving by absolutely sabotaging everything he had done with the Zeb Wells train wreck of a run. I honestly don't know what would have happened if they would have. I don't think they would have let him redo the marriage. They might have let them be a couple. When you look at what happened after he left, you would have a hard time finding a more disliked character than Paul.
Oh yeah, he is the worst character.
We get, he's still there. Mary Jane, will still sleep with him, but not Peter.
Well, she's the Venom now. That was a huge upgrade, right?
Yeah, it wasn't like she was just beyond terrified of Eddie Brock in the Michelini McFarlane run. Marvel just doesn't care. I mean, that's a betrayal in and of itself. They truly do not give one fuck about their fans, and nobody can tell me different.
No, I think Brevoort would say, but what we gave you what you wanted, you get it in Ultimate Spider-Man. You're getting the Peter Parker that you wanted that's married with kids, but he's in the Ultimate Universe. Is that enough?
No.
It doesn't ease the pay?
No, it's nice. And honestly, Ultimate Spider-Man is the one book from Marvel that I buy because of that. Now, you can differ as to how exciting the book may or may not be. Personally, for me, I've been reading Spider-Man since I've been reading them new since 12 years before they even got married. That's how long I've been around. I like the fact that you have that in that book, and I've seen every way there is to present Spider-Man, and I don't mind the time. I don't mind that the book isn't always action packed, because I like the human relationships and how they've developed, and I'm interested to see what happens going forward. Interested to see how Harry faked his death, but that's neither here nor there. But no, Spider-Man is, like I said, he's on the Mount Rushmore of comic book characters. But now it's just because of recognition. It's not for anything the character's done in the last 15 years.
He's just there because he's supposed to be. And I do think that's what really upgrades that betrayal, because it is Spider-Man. It is the flagship character. It's the main series, the reason for people to come into Marvel Comics. Whereas I do think DC Comics killing off Jason Todd because they did like a 900 phone poll and actually killed the character off is just as equally stupid as One More Day. But Jason Todd is not as important as Spider-Man in the end.
No, what happened with Jason Todd when they first introduced him? I believe his first appearance was in Batman 357. He was a Dick Grayson clone. I mean, all the way down to parents in the circus. They gave him the way they killed his parents was really jarring. And that character, he was an interesting character. Well, then post-crisis, someone decided to, I think it was Max Allan Collins, got to change his origin from a good kid to a street thug.
Yeah, he's stealing tires off the Batmobile,
right? Which, would have made a clever Elseworld story. But what they did was they turned a character that people like, because remember how heroic he was in the Legends miniseries, crawling out of his hospital bed with a full leg cast just to go help. But they just forgot that happened for a storyline where they turned him into a little punk that nobody liked. And DC recognized that and they said, hey, let's have some fun with that. I don't think of that as a betrayal at all. I think of that as a fun business, decision that they left up to the fans. Now, whether the vote was legit, no one knows for sure. Because I think he was toast either way. But they ended up finding a rather ridiculous, but way to bring him back, and now he's a member of the DC universe in good standing, and his relationship with Batman depends on who's writing him, whether or not Batman wants to bring him in for killing people, although it seems to me he's more interested in punishing Jason Todd for killing than he is the Joker. But again, I digress. So I don't look at that as a betrayal.
No? What about the Illuminati totally screwed over Hulk and sending him off? Now, we got a great story out of it, but they totally hosed him over. That was a betrayal. He's supposed to be on the team.
At the time, I can't remember exactly what was going on in Hulk's book. I know that was following the Bruce Jones run that the Hulk really wasn't ever in. So they I guess they kind of did it for his sins past. See what I did there? And we did get a good story. We got a fantastic couple of years with Planet Hulk and World War Hulk out of that.
But the heroes deserved it when he came back. He should have destroyed all of them because they totally hosed him over.
I agree. When Doctor Strange put him in a parallel dimension after Hulk 300, that had to be done. He was a mindless, what would have been a killing machine. This time, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But honestly, the Illuminati as a concept never made sense because they retconned them back into stories that you could drive trucks through the plot holes. So I think that was, I think that was a Bendis idea, or am I mistaken there?
I believe so, but the Illuminati do some really terrible stuff. During that Hickman Secret Avengers run, they're literally destroying entire multiverse planets, trillions of people at a time. Who's evil here? I think it's the Illuminati.
Yeah, so from in a comic book universe perspective, yes, that was a betrayal, but I don't think it was. If we're talking the comic book companies themselves betraying their fans, again, I don't put that in that category because that was a storyline that turned what the people you're supposed to look at as the good guys aren't, which kind of reminds me of what we've seen a lot of since then, where writers put dialogue in the supervillains' mouths thinking they're owning the chuds, and it turns out they're more reasonable than the heroes they're fighting. See Captain America. So again, that but within a comic book universe betrayal, yes, but as far as a comic book industry betrayal, no.
So one of the betrayals I mentioned that I think is complicated is Hal Jordan becoming Parallax. Hal Jordan should never become Parallax. He's the greatest Lantern of all time. But I have to admit, by the time he becomes Parallax, Hal Jordan had become very stale. They hadn't done anything really cool with him for a very long time, and it was a good way to send the character off. And without him becoming Parallax and having that big moment that did upset some people and get some notoriety on the character, I don't think we get Green Lantern Rebirth. We don't get a lot of the things that Jeff Johns built up around Hal Jordan after that and really elevated the character to where he's the undeniable number one Lantern.
That was something that had never been done in comics. You take the character, the name on the title, and legitimately turn him evil.
I remember the cover with all the rings.
It was one hell of a ballsy move, but it was probably necessary because DC had a Flash and Green Lantern problem going through the 80s. Good characters, good stories, but nothing anybody really remembered until the end of the Flash series. The Trial of the Flash was probably the best thing that ever happened to that book. It felt like a Marvel comic. It was very well done, but by that time they'd already made the decision to kill him off in the Crisis, which was necessary because that character, both those characters became more interesting posthumously. Mm-hmm. Because they went back and told retro stories that were way more interesting than the stories we were getting. And in Hal's case, he was still there, and it did. He was just kind of there, and they wanted to try something different. What we got out of it was a great new Lantern. I love Kyle Rayner. I've always loved that character. Well, until the last 15 years when they haven't figured out what to do with him. We also got his redemption in Final Night was one of the one of the best comic book moments in the 50 years I've been reading him. When Pharaoh Lad tries to sacrifice himself, and he stops him and says, I know a little something about rings, son, and then he reignites the sun, and that's supposedly what ends him. But then nothing stays dead forever in comics, and we did eventually get Green Lantern Rebirth out of that. But even when Hal came back, not everybody welcomed him back with open arms. Batman was very reticent to let him back in, so to speak. So they didn't just sweep those events under the rug and move on like nothing had happened. It did have consequences that were long lasting, but now Hal Jordan's had a lot of really good storylines in the 21st century, and he's now in 2025, thanks to Jeremy Adams, one of the most compelling characters in the DC universe.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. He's a Silver Age character, but his best stories are from modern. It's not Silver Age or even Bronze Age where he really shined. It's after he became Parallax, obviously coming back in Green Lantern Rebirth. I do agree that the only one in there that really competes with Marvel's treatment of Spider-Man is Captain America's Hail Hydra moment. It was unnecessary. It was stupid. It did nothing for the character or for Marvel Comics, and it's only done damage. It's done nothing to elevate the character later. Whereas with the Illuminati doing that to Hulk, you got awesome stories out of it. With Hal Jordan becoming Parallax, you got a great redemption and a return to form for the character where he's bigger than he ever was. The Hail Hydra moment seems to have just destroyed Cap. There's no interest anymore.
Part of that is because they've had nothing but shit writing.
That's true.
Honestly, I lost Cap with the Rick Remender run.
So Dimension Z stuff. Yeah, I did not like that.
But I realize you're not going to top Ed Brubaker. I mean, he's the best in the business. But it's like they've actively tried to diminish the character of Captain America for reasons I can only surmise that the people at Marvel don't like America. So why would they have the symbol of the country they don't like a good character? They've just undermined that character at every turn. And I don't know that there's no coming back for Captain America because Marvel, I don't think Marvel's ever coming back. This is who they are. And they're not important enough for Disney to pay attention to. So it's sort of like the activist playground. And now they have four new years to throw temper tantrums. So God only knows what they're going to do with Captain America, but that did nothing of value. Hail Hydra.
I think technically Captain America is still stuck in a cosmic cube, and the Captain America we do have is like a generation of the cosmic cube on what he should have been, right? The real one never came back.
I'll take your word for it because I don't read it, didn't read those, and I know that the Ta-Nehisi Coates run, made him a joke. J. Michael Straczynski's run was god awful, and Mark Waid's was terrible. So as far as I'm concerned, it's over for him. Cap, you're finished.
Yeah, we're never going to get a good story after the Ed Brubaker run.
I mean, again, I think that's the best run of Marvel Comics in the 21st century. So, no, you're not, but they're not even trying.
Well, very nice. I like that. That's a big proclamation, Breen. The best comic run Marvel has done in the last 25 years is Ed Brubaker's Captain America.
Can you think of a better one?
The Ultimates was really, really good.
Yeah, okay, but different universe.
Well, so it's Marvel Comics. So.
Yeah, but I still give the nod to Cap by a long shot there. But to me, the only thing that came close, I mean, Abnett and Lanning's Cosmic Odyssey that spread out over a multitude of books.
That was good.
World War Hulk and Planet Hulk. But the Brubaker Captain America was just like bringing a terrific spy movie to life with superheroes. And, he did it in continuity, which is very difficult to do. And that was, that was must reading for years.
Your feet are in the ground. There's no way it's not what Marvel has done with Spider-Man. Starting with One More Day and continuing to today, essentially.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back even farther than that. When they made the decision to break them up, which I think they had Howard Mackey be the hatchet man on that. They did it in an annual where she decides to leave him and go to California. And then Peter bounced around aimlessly for another 4 or 5 years before they, brought Mary Jane back, and they were together again for about 2 or 3 years. Then they did One More Day. So basically, Spider-Man has been effed over for the entire 21st century.